Welcome to Cheques and Balances. I'm Michael Vincent. This is James Blair. And this week we're joined by James Cochrane, a partner at Stace Hammond, and all things crypto to discuss those huge crypto returns, massive upside, very little downside.
So our crypto lawyer is back, James Cochrane from Stace Hammond. James, episode number 3. If you have not watched the other 2 episodes, shame on you. Stop now, go watch the other 2, because in the first one, James gave his own experience with crypto, and then the beginning. Then we started talking about some of the concepts around blockchain and how it's grown into this sort of mass market product. James, my next question for you is, when a market is starting out and people are joining it, there's huge opportunity, right? And the market is growing, there's great returns, but that percentage of growth, which is really, really exponential, has to slow down at a point in time just because there's only so many people in the world. The people doubling their money and making huge returns, from like a finance 101 perspective, I'm like, surely that can't last. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, you're right? I think with some of the more established, bigger market cap cryptos like Bitcoin and Ethereum, it's going to be a lot harder for Bitcoin to have those, sort of 100x, 1000x growth returns, right? The way I think about it is those big cryptos basically need to steal market share off other assets, right? They need to steal market share from equities, stocks, or bonds, cash, fixed asset, right? So is it possible that big money managers, retail, will decide, you know what, I don't want to put all my money into stocks, or I don't want to hold my money in cash because I'm not getting the return, the yield that I need. Maybe I might just allocate a little bit to crypto. What are they probably going to allocate to first? The oldest, the biggest,
established,
the most proven. So is there a chance that it could get a lot bigger? Absolutely. There's one asset manager called ARK who I think they predict that crypto's market cap will be, by 2030, will be 50 trillion. Currently it's 1.8 trillion.
Right.
So that's 27x or something
you
like
did that
that.
math, Mike?
Yeah.
I guess it's an interesting question as well in terms of this 2008 as a ideation and starting to build, maybe around 2018 really starting to pick up speed. You probably answered the question there. Through this boom, how far, and obviously there's peaks and troughs, and there's the short-term volatility, which we all understand, or at least should understand that if you're investing in this kind of stuff, you've got to understand that it could go to zero and it's going to be a very volatile ride. But in terms of the growth of the sector and how big it can get, how far through that journey are we?
I think we're super, super early. A lot of people compare it to the internet in the early 90s, right? So maybe there are parallels between the crash in tech stocks in the early 2000s, right? Because the market gets too excited and overheated, and then people cash out and then it drops. And a lot of crypto runs on narrative.
Yeah.
So you will see Elon Musk, buys $1.5 billion of Bitcoin for Tesla. Boom, right?
To the moon.
China's banning crypto mining. Down. And I guess that's one of the things I look at is called the Crypto Fear and Greed Index.
Yeah.
And that just sort of shows, because when people are scared, like they are now, right? So when the global macro outlook looks really bad, the Federal Reserve is raising interest rates, they're winding back their quantitative easing, our RBNZ is raising interest rates, that means your mortgage rate is going up, that means the debt that you've got on your house is more expensive to pay, the debt that you've got on your business is more expensive, you start taking money out of risky assets, or you don't have as much money to allocate to risky assets, and you want to keep it safe, hold it in cash or whatever. And but ultimately, once we have got through this, I guess, big inflation problem which is currently facing the central banks, then they will try and, I anticipate, stabilise things. They might get the money printers going again, because if we have a period of stagflation or recession, which is bad, is basically where everyone closes their wallets, and it's just bad generally.
It's good for the insolvency guy, right?
It's good for the insolvency guys. Yeah, what I mean, I guess the thing is, for insolvency clients, they generally found, you would have thought they would have had a ton of work after 2020, but the monetary policy, the money printing, all the banks being kind to borrowers, and then IRD not chasing anyone, basically meant there was little. It was actually a reduction in insolvency.
The real winners, James, were the family lawyers, because everybody was stuck at home with their wife, husband, and kids, and all those divorces. Cha-ching.
Oh yeah, it was. Pretty grim. But also, the property market. Because when they turn the printers on, and there's more money in the system. People, this is how I understand it. There's more money in the system. It means that effectively you're devaluing the currency. Your dollar is worth less next year, and so people look to what they call hard assets, which hold their value. Yeah. Right. So, if, for example, if they print 20% more cash, the thing that was the way the economics works is, bear in mind, I didn't study economics. The way it works is, if there's 20% more cash in the system, the thing that cost you $1 is probably going to end up costing $1.20 next year, right? So the savings are actually, being devalued, and so that's why things like property, which are traditionally good stores of value, why they tend to take off.
Yeah.
And I guess at the moment there's this. That's the idea. One of the ideas behind Bitcoin, that Bitcoin has a fixed monetary policy. There's only 21 million Bitcoins. You can divide each one by 100 million Satoshis, but ultimately it's got like this fixed monetary policy, this fixed issuance that creates a predictable level of supply and demand. And so if the supply of the coins entering the system, or if the demand for those coins exceeds the supply, then number go up. And the idea is, or is Bitcoin going to be a store of value? Or is it what's currently, how it's really being treated at the moment is like a what you call a risk-on asset? Yeah. Like an emerging market stock, or a risky tech stock. So you kind of see the way that the market moves. If the market is scared, there's often a sell-off in risk-on stocks. Like you will have seen a big sell-off, a lot of volatility in the NASDAQ, which is the tech index. So there's some big drop, Facebook/Meta. That's another thing that we can get onto if you want to. But, changing its name to Meta, which is both exciting from a crypto sense, but also scary. Because anyway, those sort of big stocks, these $1 trillion stocks, you shouldn't be seeing that sort of volatility in those, sort of A-grade stocks. But that's what happens. Yeah. And it's because of that narrative, the fear, people move. But as soon as the market, right now you might be seeing a real cool off in the property market, because people don't want to pay additional interest on their mortgage. Yeah. The developers are worried about the inflation and the cost of the materials and not being able to have any margin, that sort of stuff. So once they sort that stuff out, when the growth is stimulated, I guess, by the monetary and fiscal policy of central banks and governments, then risk on assets are going to be a place where asset managers are probably going to want to.
Yeah.
Right now the building's burning. That's how I view it.
James, let me come back to your point, and I think a really good analogy around the tech bubble in the early 2000s, very early 2000s, where I've heard a lot of people compare it, and I think there's a lot of legitimacy to the comparison, where when there's a movement, right, the movement has so much backing behind it, so much money, so much growth, that just like the internet, the outcome in terms of the impact it will have on society going forward is not in question. The question is who are going to be the winners.
Yep.
And that was a big thing with the tech bubble. You had all of this money being pumped into these companies, and 95% of them went bust.
Yep.
And so we're going to do the next podcast is going to be around different types of coins. But in terms of how do you pick the winners, and can you see something similar happening where maybe Bitcoin and Ethereum, while cryptocurrency will be part of the world going forward, maybe those early coins might not necessarily be the winners long term. What are your thoughts?
It's a really, really good question. And possibly this is why there aren't that many financial advisors, asset managers in New Zealand, not that I'm aware of, who are actually allocating, because it is so tricky to pick who are going to be the winners and who are going to be the losers. And I guess that's kind of how I approach my investments, right? I try and think about what would an asset manager do, because I guess that sort of gives you gives me a sense of security that someone else is at least going to allocate to the particular token that I'm interested in. And but you look at the networks as well. How strong is the network? The communities behind it. So something like Bitcoin has got tons of people writing academic and speaking academically about it. It's got huge institutional interest. Big private, publicly listed companies like Tesla have allocated it. There are nation states now adopting it. El Salvador, I think Ukraine actually legalized crypto the other day. Tonga is looking at, there's a proposal that it can have Bitcoin as legal tender.
Can I ask you, what does Ukraine legalizing, what does that mean?
Well, yeah. So some countries have banned it or regulate it heavily. And I guess Ukraine legalizing it, that means that I guess there's the citizenry can go, okay, well, I can hold this stuff. I don't have to be worried, that if I hold my crypto on a Ukrainian exchange that it's going to be confiscated or whatever. And I guess that promotes interest in business and things like that, right? If it is treated as legal tender, which is what they did in El Salvador, then that changes the tax treatment of it. So I don't want to bore everyone with tax chat, but the way that crypto is taxed in New Zealand is that it's taxed as property. So so if there is a gain in the value of the crypto and you sell it, you convert it to Ethereum or Solana or AVAX or whatever, you turn it back into New Zealand dollars. You realise a profit, then the IRD generally presumes that your intention was to sell it for a profit, right? Unless you have probably clearly documented an alternative intention, and that's probably a podcast for another day. But when the tax treatment of it changes, and you're not worried about getting hit with tax compliance and tax liabilities, then that accelerates adoption.
Yeah. Okay. And the idea of, I mean, come back to that concept of legalizing it by country. Some ban it, some legalize it. Are there lots in the middle who have just kind of not really addressed it, or?
Yeah, there's. If you think about New Zealand, at the moment, New Zealand doesn't have any crypto-specific legislation.
Yeah.
There's no crypto law, right? There are laws that apply to people who are trying to run crypto-related businesses. There's quite a lot of compliance for some of these businesses. If you're launching an NFT project, for example, you might have to comply with our Financial Markets Conduct Act, which is the New Zealand equivalent of the Securities Act in the US. And you guys all know all about that. They have disclosure requirements, and depending on what it is, there might need to be a fund manager. Does that answer your question?
Yeah. It's just because my view on New Zealand, the Financial Markets Authority, instead of Financial Markets Authority, right? So they, as a financial advisor, they can come into our house whenever they like, and shares, financial advice, investment property, mortgage broking has been around a long enough time that they know how to treat it. They know what good looks like. They know the things we should be doing. The crypto space, they're trying to work out how to treat it right and what to be doing, and they've got this historical framework which they're trying to pigeonhole people into, but it's almost like a learning as you go what to do.
It's very much like that, right? And there's a lot of governments, just getting back to your question, not every government is approaching it the same way. There are some places where it's banned, tend to be the more authoritarian regimes. But then there are other places where they're making it more welcoming. And, for example, like Portugal, no tax on crypto. Same thing with El Salvador. That encourages people, to, if they don't want to pay tax, then, maybe that's a possible destination for you, right? Yes, they hunt out regimes, places where they're more friendly, to the tech. And, the governments are going through this exploration, right? Our own parliament is, last year it launched a inquiry into the use of cryptocurrency. Being the nerd that I am, I decided to do a submission to the parliament. Basically, I see my role as a lawyer to be like an interpreter, because lots of people don't understand this stuff. They're scared of it, and there might be a knee-jerk reaction, which is actually not good for New Zealand if they don't properly understand it. And in the US, Joseph Biden just announced, did he vote on an executive order, basically doing the same thing, inquiring into crypto. They're really exploring how it should be regulated and that sort of stuff.
So let me ask you, you've clearly spent some time thinking about how New Zealand should treat cryptocurrency. Maybe don't talk us through your whole paper, but kind of high level, how do you think New Zealand should treat it?
Well, if you want to read it, that I quite like
in the description.
I'm going to shill now. Yeah, it's available on our Stace Hammond website.
Nice.
But it's I guess the headline of the paper is, well, this is kind of what is crypto. This is sort of a bit how it works. Some of the stuff that we've been through, actually. And things that they're quite interested in are crypto's effect on the environment, crypto's possibly impact on the financial system, its use for nefarious purposes, crime, so I guess my headline submission was, let's try and do something which is similar to Australia, which is let's learn about it, understand it, not do anything that's too over-regulated, which is going to stifle growth. Let's approach it with an open mind. Speak to the best people around the world, people who just do crypto for their job, and learn from them, learn from the experience of other governments and things like that. But maybe we do need to have a specialty crypto law that, for example, has standardized disclosure or terms or something like that around an ICO or which is an initial coin offering, or that sort of stuff. So if someone's launching an NFT project, they can have a sort of standardized, understood way of disclosing things so that they can be compliant without having to spend tons and tons of money on lawyers to understand what might I have a risk with. If you're doing an NFT project and you're receiving crypto and holding that as a treasury, might that trigger Securities Act requirements? Might you also be a virtual asset service provider, need to be compliant with AML, money laundering law? Just there needs to be, I guess, more education, more assistance from like our regulators, FMA and IRD. Have sort of done a credible start. RBNZ has released some papers as well, but it just needs to be more, and it needs to be on podcast, right? Because not everyone consumes their information by reading, long written papers. Some people like listening. Some people like watching YouTube clips. Some people just can't handle a long form thing. They might require lots of shorter snippets or whatever. But that's the headline submission. I guess there's we've got organisations in New Zealand like Blockchain NZ, which are basically trying to facilitate that purpose, help people understand crypto. There's a lot of great educational material on some of the New Zealand based businesses' sites. Like Easy Crypto's got a whole heap of really good educational material where you can learn more about it. So the more business gets behind it, the more educated people will be, the more comfortable people that will be, and the more adopted it's probably going to get. And I guess getting back to your original question, or about adoption and getting those big gains, the more people who are using the network tends to mean that the network has more value. So while you might not be getting these really big juicy gains on the bigger market cap coins, there's still plenty of opportunity if you want to largely gamble on really speculative early VC stuff. Just recognize that that's what it is. You could get, could go to zero very easily.
And look out for the Cheques and Balances coin coming October 2022. It's not a gamble at all.
Yeah, Mike's in a gold jacket. Speaking of gambling, that segues us quite nicely into our episode next week, where we're going to be talking about all different types of coins, from the more established ones to those ones that are very new, and some might be great, some might not be so great. So make sure to check out that episode next week. James, thank you very much for joining us again. Please make sure to subscribe, review, give us a like, to share the message. Like James is saying, the more that can get out, the more the subject will become more informed, so people can make better decisions. We'll see you next week.
Cheers.